everybody. Welcome to the Hidden Gems podcast. This is the podcast on Rachel's Reviews, where each week we talk about a streaming service and share some hidden gems, some deeper dives on that service that you can enjoy. And each week I'm joined by my friend Ryan.
Hi, Rachel. Top of the morning, or well, evening in this case to you.
Yes.
I'm so happy to be with you once again. It's just I don't know about you, but I'm on clouds 9 through 14. Like it's just been a good time for me.
Yeah.
And I won't go into too much detail because we're here to talk about Disney Plus, not our personal lives. But it's just been a good time, and it was punctuated by this weekend. I wanted to say thank you for having me on your Patreon watch along for Twinkle All the Way with Alonso Duralde and several of your patrons and the creative team behind Twinkle All the Way. I was not expecting that. I think you mentioned it, but I was like, oh, this is the director. I'm like,
Yeah.
I better
And
be on my best
yeah.
behavior because I had never seen it, and it was going to be just super ox if I didn't like it. But
Yeah.
thankfully, I really loved it. So,
oh, yay!
So it was good. And then you had me as a part of your patron Q&A. Got to meet a woman named Julia, who was just nothing but nice over in the UK. Shout out to you, Julia, if you're listening to this. And then I met our man Micah, and
yes,
and he was just super nice. And I don't know if you all know about this, but Rachel and I text back and forth, just to plan stuff out sometimes. And I was like, we need to hire this kid. Like once we get our Joe Rogan podcast deal of exclusivity to like iTunes or something, we need to get him as like a scheduler or something. He's going to be on like the ground floor. Like he's going to be in our autobiographies one day.
Yeah, he's incredible. And he's going to be coming on the podcast. We're doing a special episode of Talking Disney where he got to request, because of his Patreon level, me and Stanford are going to be covering Ratatouille with Micah and his mom. And so that's going to be pretty fun. It's a movie that I love. So I'm very excited to talk to him about it. Yeah, and he's great. I'll put a link down to his channel if people want to check it out, because he is really bright and wonderful. And it was such a fun event. Both of them were fun. But having Brian and Megan Herzlinger, the director and writers of Twinkle All the Way, on was so much fun. You get to hear all the backstory, but also we got to hear about what their projects filming in COVID have been like and the challenges they faced. And so that was really interesting as well, as a movie fan, to hear about all of that. So we've been doing these watch-alongs every month, and they're open for any level of patron. So you can become a patron for only $2 a month. So less than your coffee, less than things, really cheap. So check it out. I'll put all that in the description. And we definitely try to make it worth your while. I already have September's planning in the works. And so it's pretty cool. And so thank you for coming and enjoying that. And I'm really excited that you like Twinkle All the Way, because it's so fun.
Yeah, and it was just a supreme honor to be in the same chat room, I guess, as Alonso Duralde, a man who I read quite frequently his criticisms, and I don't know if he'll listen to this, but I never got a chance to speak to him other than like 5 words, but I thought he asked some really good questions, and he was just a nice guy. So like I said, because we got to get to Disney Plus eventually. Thank you, Rachel.
Yes.
I hope you can have me back for one of these, because I'll be there for every one of them if you'll have me.
Yes, like I said, I've already got, I'll just say September is in the works. We're going to be having writer Nina Weinman on, and we are going to be looking at watching her film that she wrote, Pumpkin Pie Wars, which is really fun. It's like the Romeo and Juliet without the sad ending of Hallmark movies. And so you want to check it out. And so that's going to be super fun. And Nina was the first interview that I ever did on Hallmarkies podcast. And so she's very special to us. She's been on our show. It'll be 6 times coming up. So she's the best. Anyway, so that's coming up. All of that housekeeping aside, we also have one other thing. We have the Guy at the Movies Film Festival coming up. It'll be, when this airs, it'll be tomorrow. And And so you want to make sure that you signed up, go and register. We'll have all the information. There's going to be tons of cool panels. People like Sean Chandler are going to be on there, like a ton of cool YouTubers. And we are going to be, me and Durbin, Chris from Durbin, who does the Sunday devotionals, we are going to be doing basically a Sunday devotional, but it won't be quite as religious. But we're going to be talking about toxic fandom, and it's going to be really good. So you want to check that out. And then on Sunday, we are going to be doing the first ever live episode of the Hallmarkies podcast, where we are going to be talking about the movie Hitch. So that's going to be really fun, because if you're a guy at the movies virtual film festival, so we talk about Hitch, about two guys. That's going on. Make sure to check it out.
I got to tell you, I'm looking forward to your panel with Durbin over at Durbania. It's Rachel Madness and Durbania running wild.
Yes, that's right.
Going to take on Andre the Giant and Ted DiBiase at SummerSlam '88.
Yeah. It's going to be so fun. I mean, because it's a subject I feel very passionate about, and I'm really excited to talk about it. And I love doing Sunday devotionals with Chris. So anyway, all of that said, we're going to be talking Disney Plus, and we haven't talked about it for a little while. This is our 8th Hidden Gems, though, on Disney Plus. So it's kind of how we got started. I think we did about 4 in a row. Then we decided to branch out into other stuff. And so we thought we'd first kind of give our little review of the latest Disney Plus original film, The One and Only Ivan. And this was going to go into theaters, and then it got moved to Disney Plus. What was your overall thoughts about this film?
Well, I honestly had no idea this was even going to be a thing before, like, about a week before it was set to drop on Disney Plus. I had like little to no expectations, and I ended up really enjoying it. I don't think it's going to rewrite the script making wheel, or it's going to be groundbreaking in terms of story, but it's 90 minutes. It's a quick watch. It's a good story. It's funny on occasion. I like all of the actors involved in here. Sam Rockwell, he's great. Bryan Cranston, my man, Bryan Cranston. Shaka Khan is in here. I'm a big fan of her music. Ron Funches is in here. He's a really funny comedian. Helen Mirren, Danny DeVito. It was a surprisingly stacked cast, and just the movie itself, I was like, wow, this is actually really good. This reminded me a lot of the movies Disney used to make. Either they would send them like straight to VHS or DVD, or they would be like the ones in the middle. You know, sometimes they would release like a big Disney Animated Studios release, and then a Pixar one, maybe in the same year or maybe like in different years. And then this would be kind of like the white cream in the Oreo, if you will. My analogy got away from me, but I'm sure you all can figure that out. To make a long story short, I did enjoy this movie. Like I said, it's not going to reinvent the wheel in terms of story, but I found myself saying to myself, that was far better than I ever thought it could be.
Yeah, so I agree with you about these Disney live action films, because for a while there, all we were getting was the remakes, and we weren't getting these kind of smaller films. And so I think that's something that Disney Plus can really give us, which makes me very excited, because I love these type of live action films. And I think that this definitely has moments where it feels in the spirit of something like the remake of Mighty Joe Young, which we've talked about on this podcast, that I think is very underrated and I really enjoy. It's about this gorilla that is performing at this circus that's in a mall, which is really strange, but it's true. And this actually happened. And he ends up learning to paint. And there ends up becoming sort of this outcry to kind of to let him have more space than in this mall. So yeah, I think it was a very sweet film. I enjoyed it. I would recommend it. I think people should give it a watch. I think that there's a couple things that hold it back from being like one of the greats. If you're talking like a Paddington, a Babe, on that kind of level. I think that I wish that we got to know Bryan Cranston's character better. There were times when I thought, oh, is he becoming a villain? And then he wouldn't. But we didn't really get to know his motivations, because he could be kind of rude and a jerk, and he didn't.
It's implied, and I actually was going to bring this up. There's I can't remember the character's name. He's the guy who is, I don't want to call him the janitor, but
Yeah,
he has
he's pretty mean to him.
he has the daughter, and the
Mhm.
two have like a weird relationship, like an antagonistic relationship.
Yeah,
And I was like, where is this going? And then it's like a big-lipped alligator moment. It's like it's introduced and then never seen
yeah,
again. And then another one that was at least blatant to me was Ivan goes on this tangent about Mac having a wife and how Ivan was essentially their child. It's a little weird, but
hmm
essentially Ivan caused her to run away, and we never hear from her or see her again. So it's implied that they may have separated, but it's like we hear it and then we never see it again.
yeah.
At least that's what I got.
Yeah, right. And so I think, as opposed to something like The Family in Paddington, which is so endearing, and that relationship feels really true, or Farmer Hoggett in Babe. I mean, and that's a high tier. Those are two of the best family films ever made, and if you ask me. So the relationship between Babe and Farmer Hoggett is so lovely and wonderful, and I don't think that this is even, it doesn't have any like that emotional heft of that kind of relationship that I think would have made it like even better. But especially towards the end, once he starts painting and once that plot kind of goes, I think that's when it starts to work more than maybe some of the other stuff. And once that side of it, and you see his painting, and the fact that it's based on a true story is pretty cool.
Oh, really? It is? I had no idea.
Oh, you didn't watch that in the credits?
Oh, no, I must have.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
watch a ton of credits, so
Yeah.
I clearly missed that.
Well, and then
But
Disney Plus, they're like skip the credits, and so, but yeah. Anyway, it's based on a true, I'm sure heavily, dramatized or whatever. But at the end, they show the real Ivan and the real place where uh, he was, he performed, and they said that he never left the confine. He never had fresh air for almost 30 years, which
wow.
is yeah. And then he went to a zoo in Atlanta, I guess, after that, and he had much more space. And anyway, so that makes it really interesting. And so yeah, I think it's definitely worth a watch. I agree with you. It's not a classic. It's not going to change your life, but it's sweet, and I think your kids will like it. And the animals are cute, and so I would check it out. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about our 5 recommendations that we have for Disney Plus. I'll give my first recommendation, and it is the documentary Howard. And this is a pretty straightforward documentary as far as the filmmaking goes, but it's about such a cool person that it works, about Howard Ashman and his life, and of course his very, very early passing from AIDS, which is so sad. But I really loved this documentary. I love Howard Ashman. I think he was incredible, and it was very moving, and especially the whole section on Beauty and the Beast, like both as a tribute to him, but also because of my love for that film, was just amazing. Seeing Angela Lansbury and Jerry Orbach there with Howard and Paige O'Hara, and that whole thing was so cool, so touching. And of course, you see Alan Menken, you see the all the other people that worked with him, being interviewed, even Jeffrey Katzenberg, people like that. So it's definitely any Disney fan should watch it, but just anybody who is creative, who has a voice, who's maybe feeling frustrated, whatever, watch Howard, and I think you get a lot of inspiration.
Yeah, I was when you sent me the list of your recommendations, I was like, Howard Ashman, why does that sound so familiar? And then I looked him up on IMDb, and it was just like, wow, this guy was supremely talented. He wrote the
Yeah.
music for Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Little Shop of Horrors with Rick Moranis, which I think is very underrated. I love that movie to pieces, but I had no idea he was behind like some of the best music from the early Disney Renaissance. You know, he was behind Aladdin, and he was behind The Little Mermaid. And I know, Rachel, you're a big fan of The Little Mermaid.
Yes.
I'm a big Aladdin fan, and
Yeah.
so like I always knew Alan Menken's name, but I had never heard of Howard Ashman's name, and
Yeah.
I feel sad that I never knew it until they made a documentary about him, and he passed away in 1991 from AIDS, like the same year that Beauty and the Beast was nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards.
Yeah, it was just before the movie was released that he passed away. And so I think he got to see a final cut, but it was before the premiere and everything. And in Beauty and the Beast, it said they have a tribute at the end. It says, "To our friend Howard, who gave a mermaid her voice and a beast his soul, we will be forever grateful." And I always think that's so beautiful. And he actually got a story credit on The Little Mermaid, which is not always the case with a lyricist. You don't always get a story credit, but he was so involved, especially in Ursula. And there's a great scene in the documentary where you get to see him singing Poor Unfortunate Souls, and him really getting into it and trying to show the animators kind of what he wanted. And so he was a special person. I've said it a million times. They need to make a biopic about Howard Ashman. And they need to have Michael Fassbender play him because they look so similar. And he's getting a little too old. They need to do it now. We need to start that campaign. So,
Balls in your court, Disney.
but it was a very touching, lovely documentary done by his friends. It's directed by Don Han. It's directed by Don Han, who is one of the animators who worked with him. And so definitely worth your watch is to watch Howard. What's your first pick?
So my first pick, and I was walking a bit of a tightrope with this one because it's A Bug's Life, and this was Pixar's second outing after Toy Story, and it's a bit of a gray area because, you know, A Bug's Life is still held in relatively high regard. I mean, it is Pixar, but I consider it a bit of a hidden gem because Pixar has gone on to do so many great movies that it had to leave some movies in the dust. And unfortunately, I think A Bug's Life is one of them. And I think it's a tragedy because I've always loved this movie ever since I first watched it. It tells the story of an ant named Flick who is incredibly smart and very driven, but unfortunately causes nothing but trouble for his ant farm. And through a series of unfortunate events, the ant colony gets in trouble with a grasshopper named, well, Hopper. And he's voiced by Kevin Spacey, and said, we need a certain amount of food before the last leaf falls. And so Flick takes it on himself to find some warriors to fight off the grasshoppers. And he finds some, quote, warriors in the form of a really, really bad circus troupe. And hijinks ensue. I became fascinated with this movie because it was released the same year Ants was released. And when Jeffrey Katzenberg left for DreamWorks, he said, I'm taking the Bug idea with me. And so that's the reason why we got two Ant movies in the same year. I've seen Ants and I've seen A Bug's Life, and I prefer A Bug's Life. Ants is really good. Sylvester Stallone is an ant. You can't go wrong. But I love the story in A Bug's Life. It's got a great cast. The Kevin Spacey element is a bit tricky, especially with the news nowadays, but he plays his role to a T. Howard Ratzenberger, John Ratzenberger is in there, and he's funny as always. Dennis Leary's in there, David Hyde Pierce is in there. I could go on, but just I think A Bug's Life is definitely one of Pixar's most underrated movies, and I think everybody should give it another chance. Not its fault, but it just Pixar has gone to do such better things that it's just like A Bug's Life is like it just got forgotten, and I think that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Bugs Life is definitely underrated. I think it's really funny. I just love when he's like, I know what a rock is. Do I look like I'm a person who doesn't know what a rock? And I've spent a lot of time around rocks. I love that. That's so funny. And also, I mean, for Pixar, it actually has a pretty strong female character in Princess Ada that you don't see in many of their films and until Brave, I guess, and also, I think the whole idea of the small ants coming together to defeat the large grasshopper is like a good message. So, I think it's definitely a good one and a good movie to revisit because I think a lot of people have forgotten it, and I do prefer it over Ants, but partly it's that as I'm not like the biggest Woody Allen fan in the world.
Yeah, one more note before we move on. I still own, to this day, my VHS copy of A Bug's Life in the clamshell, and I still
Nice.
watch it from time to time. I can even like memorize the advertisements. It's like with the weird ethereal music, and it's like now coming to home theater, and it's just like nostalgia. But anyway, what's
You
yours?
gotta
What?
have and I mean, and Heimlich is the best. Someday I'll be a beautiful butterfly, and then everything will be better. I love it. Very good. All right. Well, my next choice is a series, and it is Star Wars Rebels. And I have not been the biggest fan of most of the Disney Star Wars output. I mean, I've just liked some of them okay, some of them I haven't liked, but the one thing that I legitimately loved all the way throughout, didn't disappoint me at all, is Star Wars Rebels. I really enjoyed this series. I haven't seen all of Clone Wars, and I have not seen the most recent season because I'm trying to catch up. But I just prefer this because this is about new characters. You do have cameos coming in every now and then that you'll see. You see Princess Leia briefly. You see all our different characters. But this is predominantly about new characters that you get to know, and I think they're all really, really well done. I particularly love all of the female characters in this. I really like Sabine. I think she's really great. I really like the I like Hera. I like you get to see more of Ahsoka Khan. You just all of these female characters that are strong, that are interesting, that have flaws that you get to follow along the way. I just really I like all of the characters. I like Ezra. I like Kanan. I I like the stories. Some of the stories are more kiddie than other episodes, but I think that has some really thrilling moments, and I just think it's genuinely the best Star Wars that we've gotten since Return of the Jedi. I really do.
Yeah, I've watched every episode of this series, and I love this series. I would give the narrow edge to Star Wars: The Clone Wars, but I guess that had a lot more time to play with the characters and explore new planets. But Star Wars Rebels is still like it's still excellent. It's got a great voice cast. Freddie Prinze Jr. is in there.
Mm-hmm.
He voices Kanan, does a phenomenal job. Steve Bloom is in there, who was the voice of the guy from Toonami. I'm blanking on his name at the second, but I'll always remember his voice. It was like stay gold, and I'm like goosebumps every time. D. Bradley Baker is in there. He's been a voice on Phineas and Ferb and American Dad and just a lot of other shows. David Oyelowo, who's gone on to do a lot of big movies, including Selma. He was Martin Luther King Jr. in that. He's really good as Agent Callus. And just overall, this movie, this series just has great animation, and it uses nostalgia wisely because
Mm-hmm.
Darth Vader is in this, Obi-Wan Kenobi is in this, and Yoda is in this.
And
But
Darth
you only see
Maul.
them in special episodes.
Yeah.
And it single-handedly turned Darth Maul into just one of the best characters ever. It just turned complete 180 from the Phantom Menace. So
Yeah.
give Dave Filoni all the credit in the world. Like I'm a Dave Filoni guy.
Yeah. And don't you agree about the female characters too? That Hera and Sabine and these characters that they have, they're interesting. They have flaws. They're. I mean, yeah, you have the ability in a series to really flesh out your characters in the way you can't always in a movie. But I don't know. I just feel like they're some of the best female characters in all of Star Wars.
Sabine, especially,
Mm-hmm.
she's a
Yeah.
Mandalorian, but she has revoked the Mandalorian Brotherhood, if you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
So she's wrestling with that, and Hera has her own problems, and it's to bring up one of your favorites, Rachel. It kind of reminds me of the X-Men series. It's
Mm-hmm.
these characters
Yeah,
are
it's a good
damaged.
comparison.
They're damaged goods, but
Yeah.
they hold it together long enough to keep the Empire at a respectable distance,
Yeah.
and that's something to be admired.
Yeah, and I just like the fact that this, like I said, is new characters that we can get invested in, as opposed to that's why I'd give it the edge over Clone Wars, which is about our same characters that we know with Obi-Wan and Anakin.
That's a
So
fair point. That's a fair point.
what's your next pick?
Take notes, J.J. Abrams, on from Star Wars Rebels, but I digress.
Right. Yes.
My
Put
next,
Filoni and give him more to do.
give him the keys to the kingdom.
Yes.
He clearly knows what he's doing. But my next choice, speaking of Star Wars, this is a bit of a kind of Star Wars kind of knockoff, and I say knockoff not as a dig, but it came out during a time when Star Wars was the biggest thing ever, and people were like, we need space movies now. And so Disney tried to capitalize on that by creating The Black Hole. This
Yes.
movie is known for many reasons as being one among them being the first PG movie ever made from Disney. And up until that point, they had only made rated G movies because Walt Disney was like, I will only make entertainment for the entire family. But due to changing trends, The Black Hole was made. And this is notorious for having a lot of problems backstage and going over budget. But I watched a video on this movie from a channel called Good Bad Flicks, and it just, like, curiosity killed the cat, you know? So I finally sat down and watched it, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's got Anthony Perkins in there, who was Norman Bates from Psycho. He's far less of a psycho in this movie. The late Robert Forster, who just passed away last year. For all my Breaking Bad fans, he was the vacuum cleaner guy. May Robert Forster rest in peace. And Maximilian Schell is in there, who was in movies like Judgment in Nuremberg, and he was really good. And what I love about the movie is just the atmosphere of this ship, of just how intimidating it all looks. From the robots to the controls to the captain and just everything in between. I think if this movie were released 10 years later, it would have a much better reputation, but it is what it is. But I think The Black Hole is criminally underrated and has gone overlooked for far too long.
Yeah, I actually have a review of this on my channel under Family Movie Night, so I'll put a link maybe down to that in the
That's
notes.
an interesting pick for Family Movie Night, considering some of the stuff that happened.
Yeah. It was in my Disney Scares month that I covered it. One of the years that I've been doing that, which is coming up soon. We'll be very excited. I have some fun stuff planned.
Plug.
Yes, and I actually think that this. I actually think that has more to do with Star Trek than it does have to do with Star Wars.
Interesting.
I just the way that I don't know. I felt like it was kind of a long episode of Star Trek, more than it doesn't have any of the fantasy elements of Star Wars, as opposed to the feel of Star Trek. But it does kind of go crazy, especially towards the end. But But I love the production design is really cool. The alien, not the alien, the robot is really cool. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I did enjoy it. And it definitely has sort of a camp factor too, if you enjoy sort of campy sci-fi type stories. And I think you'll like it. And yeah, it was an interesting time for the Disney Studios because it was when Ron Miller was the president and he was started taking more risks than had been done before. You see things like Watcher in the Woods, something
which is also underrated, by the way.
Yes,
Woods. I do really enjoy that.
Yeah, and then something Wicked This Way Comes, which I love, and there's a bunch of interesting sort of late 70s, early 80s, a little bit darker kind of feeling of films, even maybe going as far as something like the Black Cauldron, which was kind of the kind of ruined all of that. It kind of put the kibosh on all of that.
It was
such a flop.
It was rock bottom.
Yes. So yeah, it's an interesting period for the Disney Studios, and an interesting pick. So my next pick is very different from the Black Hole. This is the rom-com, While You Were Sleeping, and this is not only a delightful rom-com, but it's also I think it counts as a holiday film. So it really checks both check for me things I like. And you gotta love Sandra Bullock. This is probably at the height of her powers. She's so charming, and you just want somebody to take this darn woman to Florence. Like, let's get some stamps on her passport, please, because she's so likable and she's so endearing. And yeah, the plot is pretty silly. I mean, as far as this lie that she tells everybody that she's this guy's fiance, it's kind of ridiculous, but I like rom-coms with a big lie sometimes. I think it can be really charming and funny, and that's what it is here. And she has such good chemistry with Bill Pullman. They have so many fun scenes together, and I absolutely love the whole scene when they're at dinner with his family, and the conversation is just all over the place, and that totally feels real to a big family dinner to me. They're talking about Argentinians make great beef, and then somebody else is tall, and Mary made the mashed potatoes, and it just goes all over the place, and I think it's so funny. And I just love this movie. This is totally in my wheelhouse. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. But when you sent me your list, I was doing research. This movie was directed by John Turteltaub. And some of the stuff that John Turteltaub has directed over the years, like both the National Treasure movies, a movie in which Nick Cage steals the Declaration of Independence. I promise the movie's awesome.
Yeah.
He directed The Meg, which is about Jason Statham finding a giant shark, and just like hearing all of this. And then he directed a movie with Sandra Bullock, Bill Pullman, Peter Boyle, and Jack Warden. And like, the man has range. That's all I will say.
Yeah. It is such a charming film. I really highly recommend it. I think you'd like it.
It does have a lot of names in here that I like. When I saw Jack Warden, like my face just lit up, because Jack Warden is just, he acted for so long in so many good things. He was in 12 Angry Men. He was in too many episodes of The Twilight Zone to even mention. So yeah, I got to go out of my way to take a look at this, because it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it's so good. So what's your next pick?
So my next pick is from 2009, and it is from the brilliant mind of Wes Anderson, and it's called Fantastic Mr. Fox. This movie is based on the legendary book by Roald Dahl, who also wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and a ton of other books. And it tells the story of a fox named, well, Mr. Fox. And after retiring from stealing food from farmers, he decides to take it up again, and gets in trouble with 3 specific farmers, Bogus, Bunce, and Bean. That's a simplified version of the plot, but I'm honestly not doing it justice, because this movie is just brilliant. It's stop motion animation, so stop motion has my heart by principle alone, but just the stacked cast that comes along with it. You got George Clooney, Meryl Streep, Bill Murray, Jason Schwartzman, Willem Dafoe, Owen Wilson. Just it goes on and on and on from there. And just this movie is just, it looks beautiful, and it just it's so great, and it's got so many funny moments where everybody, when they mean to say a curse word, they say cuss, like you little cuss and you mother cusser and you cuss, and just it's so funny. And there's an entire scene where Foxy and Mr. Badger are just like, you little cuss and I'll cuss you right in your little cuss. And it's so hysterically funny, and it just is so good. And then the finale where Mr. Fox sees this wolf and they raise their fists together, and it's just good stuff. But just, we need more stop motion animated movies in our lives. Like, that's all I'll say.
And this movie came out in the best year for animated films ever in the history of animation, when you had Up and this and Princess and the Frog and Coraline and Secret of the Kells. Amazing year. Otherwise, I think it would have won best animated film that year, because it was just such an incredible year. But I love this movie. I think it's so funny. I think the animation is so beautiful, and so there's such an attention to detail that I love in stop motion. And so, yeah, I think it's a delightful choice. All right, my next choice, if people enjoyed Hamilton on Disney Plus, they should definitely check out Newsies, the musical. They have both of them. They have the original film, but then they have the Broadway musical on Disney Plus. And if you're missing Broadway, missing show, live theater, then this is a good chance to get to watch this show, which was the Tony Award winner for Best New Musical that year. And they have the terrific cast of the Broadway show. That you have Jeremy Jordan and John Dossett, Carol Lindsay, Ben Benkhauser, just this wonderful cast. And it's just really, really delightful to watch. And I really like the story. And I think that they improved upon the movie in pretty much every way. They made it better, and that's why it got embraced. It's such an underdog story of going from being this reviled movie to then being a Tony Award winning musical. So I really enjoyed it. I think it's definitely worth checking out if you like Broadway shows.
I've actually seen this one. This movie came to my local theater for a Fathom event, and I took a chance on it, and I just fell totally in love.
Yeah.
I can't remember what episode we did talking about it, but I remember recommending the original Newsies from '92, the debut of Christian Bale, and he's gone on to do a lot of awesome things. But yeah, I miss live theater so much. Like, it just, there's something about going and seeing a Broadway show that just, it just hits you right in the feels. I saw Phantom of the Opera on Broadway, and it's like I'm there right now. It's one of my fondest memories ever. And I know I'm going off on a tangent, but live theater, it's just, you really can't beat it.
I know. I miss it so much. So much. So people should take a look. It's really fun. So what do you have next?
So my next pick is a follow-up from one of my other picks. I can't remember the specific episode, but one of our former episodes, I recommended Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey. Well, today I'm recommending the sequel, Homeward Bound 2: Lost in San Francisco. This is a bit of a step down from the first one, I'm not going to lie, but at the same time, it's still a lot of fun. It features the same three animals, Chance, Sassy, and Shadow, and they get lost this time in San Francisco. And their goal is that they have to get to the Golden Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge. And along the way, they meet up with several stray dogs, one of which is voiced by Sinbad, which, I mean, that's always cool.
Yeah.
And And I always loved this movie. I've never really been that much of a dog person, but if I had to be a dog person, I would love to have Shadow as my dog, because he would just be like, he just has loyalty running throughout his entire body, and it just is like I need to like bottle that loyalty and like power a whole city with it. Michael J. Fox voices Chance. He's always cool. Sally Field is always great, and Shadow is voiced by a gentleman named Ralph Waite, who was in a lot of TV shows. He was in Cliffhanger and The Bodyguard and a lot of smaller stuff. But like I said, I think this is a minor step down from The Incredible Journey, because The Incredible Journey has a lot of stuff that is just sticks with me more, but Lost in San Francisco is just as good.
Yeah, actually, I've never seen this one, or if I did, it was when I was little and I don't remember. So I'll have to check it out. So, I mean, I like the first one, so sometimes it's a little bit hard, think. I hope that they were treating. I've heard that they weren't treating the animals the best, and so it can be a little like, oh, but
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
but I'd like to try to hope that they were okay and everything was fine. It's like not too much of an incredible journey. Now they would probably use a bunch of CGI. But I'll check that one out. I like those kind of movies. I like animal movies better than I like watching animals better than having them actually in my life. Like I'm not a pets person, myself. But I enjoy watching them in the movies. So that sounds like a lot of fun. Well, my last choice is one that maybe when it came out, it wouldn't be considered a hidden gem, but I feel like it's not really talked about much anymore, is the Peanuts movie. And this, I think if you are going to praise the Into the Spider-Verse, you need to give some credit to the Peanuts movie, because what they did in combining in creating this hybrid animation between with the flat look of the 2D animation with the 3D look as well was something really new that hadn't quite been done the way they did it in the Peanuts movie, and it was sort of the predecessor to Spider-Verse and other hybrid animation. And so I love the look of this movie. I think they really captured the appeal of the specials and the comics. And I love the whole Peanuts. I love the whole emotional honesty of especially Charlie Brown, where he is very frank about how he feels about everything. And I think that's so refreshing. And he, here's his frustration about his ability to bond with his fellow classmates, and the red-haired girl, and then you also see Snoopy and his escapades as the Red Baron, and the whole thing is so charming. And when Charlie Brown decides to be honest about his work and that he shouldn't be getting the award, like that's such a true moment. And the whole moment where it's dance is really lovely. And I don't know, I just love this movie. And I'm so excited that it's on Disney Plus. Hopefully some people will see it. I wish they would make a sequel because there's so many more stories to tell. But I don't know if that's a problem with the Schultzes. I know it was a hard sell to even get them to make this one, but I love it. I think it's so good. I love the fact that all of the voices are actually children, which is true to the specials. And I love the music, and yeah, I just think it's great. What do you think about this one?
Oh, I have loved this movie ever since I first saw it. I am a humongous Peanuts fan. Like, if you look at the shelf behind me, you probably can't see it, but on like the bottom shelf, I've got like my father's old collection of Peanuts shorts and like collected editions. Plus, I have the Peanuts Treasury behind me, which is like a lot of like the early stuff. So I'm a Peanuts stan, for lack of a better word. I'm
Yeah.
obsessed. And when I heard this movie was coming out, I'm like, well, I'm seeing that opening night, and it was awesome.
Yes,
Like
it's so
Blue,
good.
I'm not really a big fan of Blue Sky Studios, but they outdid themselves with this one. the ending especially, and I won't give it away, but the ending of this movie especially
Oh,
was just like, wow, that was just spectacular. Like, you can't make a better ending to that even if you wanted to. It's just like they nailed that directly on the head. Yeah, I hope they make a sequel too, but I guess we'll have to chalk that up to the Calvin and Hobbes movie that we'll never get because Bill Watterson
no.
is lost in the woods somewhere. Because I'm a big Calvin and Hobbes fan too. I own
I
all the collected
know.
editions, and it's so good, and yet it sits there collecting dust.
Yeah. And I get it because you don't want it to be ruined, but I think that's what the Blue Sky people were able to convince them that they would do it right, and I think they did here. So, what is your last pick?
So my last pick is a series, and if any of you have listened to this podcast for any length of time, you'll know that I'm a massive Disney Channel guy. And one of my favorite series I liked watching growing up was called That's So Raven. This starred Raven Simone, and she played a girl named Raven, and she's pretty normal. She has friends. She goes to high school, but she also happens to be psychic, and like just before something bad happens, she gets a psychic vision and she realizes, oh crap, I gotta fix this. And she ends up causing more trouble than it's actually worth. But that's what makes the show funny. Raven Simone was really, really good in the show. They actually ended up making a sequel series to it called Raven's Home that I have not seen, but I have heard good things.
Mm.
And this was when Raven was like on the Mount Rushmore of like Disney Channel like stars. She was on everything. She was even in the Cheetah Girls, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I listened to a fair bit of Cheetah Girls music in my life. Like I'm a grown man, and I admit to listening to the Cheetah Girls,
Yeah.
Cheetah Sisters. But anyway, this show is just wholesome, and it's really, really good stuff. Raven Simone's really good in it. I like her family. I can't remember the actors' names off the top of my head, but I love her dad. I love her mom. This is a family that I would love to know today. Like, it's really, really good stuff. And this was released around 2005, and it lasts till about 2008. It's far too short of a run. You all should go ahead and check that out.
Yeah, I've actually never seen this one, but I've heard good things. And I mean, it's cool too that you've got, a show, a series with people of color. That I think that meant a lot to that something you didn't see all over the place in Disney Channel at that time. So that's cool as well. So I definitely will have to check it out. It looks charming.
Mm.
Yeah. So very good. So we did it. So let us know what you think of our picks and what have you been watching on Disney Plus. Let us know. And if you saw the one and only Ivan, let us know your thoughts on that in the comment section. And make sure you sign up for the the Movies Film Festival. It's going to be really cool. You definitely want to sign up and attend as many panels as you can. So please check that out. And so Ryan, where can people find you?
They can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at RyanCam20. And of course, there's my channel, RyanCam Movie Reviews, with Tenet finally coming to theaters. I'll be finishing Nolan month. That means reviews for Inception, Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, and Dunkirk. It's going to be a lot of
Oh,
Nolan-heavy content coming out this week. And I've also got the AFI project going full steam ahead. Today is Monday, which means my episode for The Bridge on the River Kwai dropped this afternoon. And after that, I've got episodes coming up for The Best Years of Our Lives from director William Wyler. And let's see, I've also got ones for The Treasure of the Sierra Madre from John Huston,
I love that.
and Doctor Strangelove, and I won't say the rest of that title, from Stanley Kubrick, and of course, The Sound of Music, starring Julia Andrews, one of my all-time favorites, directed by Robert Wise. So now's as good a time as any to go ahead and subscribe.
Yeah, that's some good stuff you got going on there. That's great. So yeah, and make sure you subscribe to Rachel's Reviews. You can find me all over social media and on iTunes, YouTube, and Rotten Tomatoes. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave us your ratings and reviews. That means so much. We had a review this week and I was so excited. So thank you so much. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We have the Patreon group like we talked about. Check that out. It's really fun. I also have Hallmarkies podcast. We had this week my interview with author Debbie Maycomber. So that was awesome. She's a best-selling author. So check that out over there. And then also check out our merch store, which has lots of fun stuff too, including Hidden Gems designs you can get on whatever you want, t-shirts or whatever. So enjoy that. And thanks again, everybody. And we'll talk to you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.